Make sure you have your gavel. You know, be, you know.
Oh, I thought you were fishing.
No.
No nothing.
Your way, Henry.
Let's see, we call the roll real quick. Chairman Chin.
Right.
Secretary Coble, I haven't heard from yet. Do not know if she'll be here or not. Commissioner Boris, Woody's out of town, won't be at the meeting today. Commissioner Runke.
Here.
Commissioner Powell, Vice Chair Powell is also out of the office, or out of state for the time being. Commissioner Cruz.
Here present.
And Commissioner Richard.
Here.
We are short of quorum. Not that in this setting it really matters. We don't take any votes on anything at this session.
Let's do Robert rules order and suspend the rules.
Nothing.
No comment.
Chairman, the floor is yours.
Today we're working session for 3:25:13, and we'll start with the general discussions. And we'll just go by the agenda as posted.
The finances for the Housing Authority for the month of February, you will note the requested change in the reports. We added the month-to-date financials as well, so you can see kind of a twofold pictures of how it performed in any given month, as well as how it performed year-to-date. So for the month-to-date for the month of February, we had an $85,000 net profit. Year-to-date, it's roughly a $370,000 net profit. We're pretty much continuing along the lines that we have for most of the latter half of the year. We've seen those kind of steady increases in our year-to-date net profit on our public housing program. We've made changes to the Section 8 program. We have made changes to the Section 8 program's operations. We've changed how we do our leasing a little bit since about November. And as a result, we've seen the losses in that program decrease by about 65%. The Section 8 program for the month of February had about $33,000 net loss. But when you compare it to the average of the prior 10 months, that's a 65% decrease in loss, which means we've done a lot better in kind of cutting our costs and making sure that we're living within the funding that we're receiving. You will notice for the month of February in the AMP2 in our public housing program, the month-to-date profit is kind of small. It doesn't really, if you look at it given the whole year, it doesn't really make a lot of sense because it's only about $1,000. The difference there, we get a grant that is related to that program every year, so that's a large part of the annual revenue that we get in that program. So that's part of the reason why there's just such a small number there in that profit. Also for the month of February for that program anyway, we didn't allocate any capital funds. We didn't do any large-scale capital improvements. So those are the two things that kind of minimize that profit for that program. Are there any questions on the financials?
No.
The legal expenses in AMP1, and I think a couple other places were just really high. Is there a reason for that?
There was a part of it had to do with just getting a new legal team in. We did have them here a lot doing trainings and having discussions. Also, as far as AMP2 is concerned, we have been doing a kind of a push on evictions, which are a little bit of that cost. They don't have to total out to the total amount of the increase, but that and the amount of additional kind of work we've been doing, getting the new county attorneys up to speed and having them work on some projects, we immediately brought them in and put them to work on a few projects for us, which probably raised the cost a little bit.
Okay, so that's all for the current attorney, none of that is for a past attorney?
No, those charges for that month are for the current attorney. Now, there are bills that were paid versus if you look in the list of bills, there's a $23,000 bill for the previous attorney. That's not listed here because it's for January work, and it's just the way the accounting works out.
And when did you say our fiscal year started when all of this was dropped?
Hello.
There's a pizza guy.
You didn't order, you don't get it.
I'm sorry, the fiscal year begins in April.
April, okay.
So we'll have, next month's report will be the last report for our previous fiscal year.
Okay. Okay.
And Commissioner Cruz, I don't know when you got off, but any questions?
No, I just
I
checked
had
out.
one question,
Yes, ma'am.
and I don't know what page it's on, but it was for some, I think it was for RTA.
We are, if I believe, is it in you requesting the list of bills or the financials?
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, something like that.
Oh, no, see, that's fine. I didn't know which exactly.
Yeah, because I thought that it's, yes, the list.
One of the things we've been doing as part of our Ross program, Kim has been able to get a few people placed in our program.
Hi. Hi.
And as a result of that placement, there have been some issues as far as trying to help people find transportation to their program. So what we did, she made and got out and kind of shook hands with some groups, and there's a church that's actually going to reimburse us for the funds that are listed there for RTA. But we are actually helping some of the residents who are in the program who are going to go to work be able to get to work.
All right, and I know I've asked this a number of times, but I still, the HAP revenue.
Mhm.
Okay, so there's a large amount of it, but it's not in the budget. Like, so February actual, 687,000, February budget is 0. So, just one more time.
The original budget didn't account for the HAP at all.
Okay.
And that budget's not, I'm not really sure why that was set up that way. That was just how they prepared the budget at that point in time. Typically, though, it really doesn't make any difference because the way you budget for HAP is a net zero.
Yeah.
So whatever you're getting, you're supposed to send out anyway. So why they chose to present it that way, I don't really know, but that's the reason why there's no amount there.
Okay, thanks.
Are there any other questions on the financials?
I have something, I don't know if I'm in the right place, I'm on the income statement.
Mhm.
And the variance seemed to me that it's not always, take the first one. I think that's what I looked at. To me, I figure a negative just by looking at it, and then it's showing a positive. Some of them are right, some of them seem to be an error.
I'll double check just to make sure everything is working. With the way it's typically set up, the variance in the income side is different than the variance on the expense side. On the income side, if you have a higher number than budgeted, say you had $10,000 in actual revenue versus $8,000 in actual revenue, you'll see a positive $2,000.
Okay,
If that same thing happened in the expense side, if you had $10,000 in expense when you budget,
Okay.
exactly. So that may be something, but I will double check just to
no,
make sure.
that's what it is.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Mhm.
I was just looking at it. Okay, thanks.
If there are no other questions, we can move to the list of bills. Are there any questions regarding the list of bills?
Oh, one. I don't know where it is now, but there was a check written for a disbursement for a car or something. What's that?
There are certain vehicles that, obviously we have a small fleet of vehicles, we have about 10 or so vehicles. And for those vehicles that belong to us, we have to do the repairs and maintenance on. So I don't know if that's the charge. There are certain situations where staff use their personal vehicles
Okay.
to do travel. And once a month, if there are any reimbursements in regards to mileage or gas
Okay.
and anything like that, we do provide that reimbursement.
Because it was written to an individual, that's what I was asking.
Oh, yeah, that one, that's in relation to personal use of a vehicle. And in conjunction, there's actually more than one thing. There's personal use of a vehicle, and then there was an actual charge that she paid for with her own check that we had to reimburse her.
All right.
There's some GFCI covers, and this used to be kind of all over the board as far as like how much they cost.
At the time that we purchased, and there is a need, and Commissioner Cruz has stressed this to me, that we need to kind of uniform who we purchase from and how we do. So every time we go out to purchase, as much as we can, we try to find the lowest cost. So at times those prices do vary depending on how much we're buying, depending on where we're getting it from. We do try to get them in different places. Sometimes they're different, as I understand, there may be different materials as well. I think Jimmy could go into a little bit more detail. But to my understanding, sometimes they are different actual pieces of material as well.
Yeah, it could be like on this one from February 13th, it's like there's one $14.10, one $279.80.
And it doesn't also, I'll have to look into the quantities as well, but I'll double check to make sure.
Maybe.
And I'll have it for you by Wednesday. Are there any other questions?
How many people have cell phone?
The maintenance staff have phones that they can use to communicate back and forth. They don't have actual minutes text messaging, even though we're going to allow them text messaging. Verizon has a way to kind of close the system, so it's kind of a closed-knit system. So that's 10 on the maintenance staff, and the administrative staff, they're probably about 6. So all in all, probably between 14 and 15 total users.
What about AT&T Universal?
The
Is that the cell? Is that the
No,
cell?
Verizon is a cell phone. AT&T Universal, it's just the name. I believe it. I hope we covered it. I tried to change it on the way we reported.
Yeah, because it says Health Club. And
You're right. The AT&T Universal is a city. It's a
I know. I want to.
Did I not tell you?
yeah. And I thought
You're
I got
gonna
it.
keep getting that.
I thought I got it, and I will fix that and make sure it stays fixed. It's a credit card issued. AT&T is just the logo on the card. It's a city card. The healthcare is paid for by the employees. We just know that the employees reimburse the agency, so nobody's going to the spot, on work.
See, right next to AT&T, just gotta put credit card.
I thought I did it. I did it last month and it didn't do it this month. So I apologize. But I will make sure to get that and standardize that form. Anything else?
What's a spray trigger?
Did-
Spray trigger. Under pipe systems?
It's probably one of those spray bottle kind of things.
Yeah, we, like for, when we put chemicals into a plastic thing and container, just a little sprayer, I think, I believe that's what you're talking about. 'Cause I know we haven't used any of our spray painting machines, so it must be.
Yeah, so, I mean, as you look, have you seen this, by the way? Let me just show you, because we're kind of in charge of the numbers. So if you look at pipe systems there, and it says spray trigger, it's similar to your question earlier.
Mhm.
There's one for 18 bucks, then there's one for like 279 and 89 or whatever, which just brings up a whole bunch of questions.
Sure.
You know what I mean? In terms of,
I can look it up.
no, I mean, I'm not saying look that one up. I'm just saying from our perspective.
Sure.
When we look at stuff and we notice that there's 18 spray triggers and some of them are $2,
Right.
some of them are 18, some of them are 25, it just opens up a whole bunch of questions in our minds.
Lots of times it
So-
depends on the quantity. I mean.
And one of the things we'll do, in this form, we've kind of been a little kind of making the adjustments. What we'll add to this is a line for quantities products.
That
So just so you
really
can
be
see,
good.
Yeah,
with the numbers that we're over.
yeah, that way we don't have to spend all of our great valuable time on, smaller Mickey Mouse stuff that you guys know what it is, and I know you do, but we don't.
No, absolutely.
And it's really ultimately our responsibility to make sure that we're checking stuff, so.
Not a problem.
And I know you guys hate these questions too, but,
We love it. I can talk.
yeah, right.
If there are no other questions on the list of bills, Mr. Chairman.
Second,
All right.
that's the thing, monthly report.
Sharon's not here, so I'll be doing 2 reports today. She's out sick, so hope she gets better. As you can see in the report, we are pretty much done with our draft of the strategic plan. So we'll be presenting that to the board early in April. You'll get your first draft of that. Obviously, we'll get it to you before the board meeting, so there's time to take it in, review it, ask questions. We'll have a full presentation at the working session in April that will go into a lot of discussions. Just we'll need the full 2 hours next month. But we'll go into that discussion about all the things that we have planned, all the things we want to do, and also we'll outline the timeline in which we believe that we can do these things and present a very rough estimate pro forma budget as to how we expect to finance a lot of the change that we're planning on bringing forward. As most of you are probably aware at this point, as of March 1st, the federal government did fail to pass a budget which enacted automatic spending cuts. Those spending cuts are across the board, and they did impact HUD. They only impacted HUD to about 8%. That's the general cut that the overall department received. However, their cuts to the housing authority were a lot deeper than that, and partly because they were planning on, and they were trying to prepare in the event that a March 27th deadline came and when we didn't have a continuing resolution, which we do. Because of that, it is really anticipated that we'll receive the majority of the funding that we were expecting to receive. We should receive about 92% of our funding. It typically takes HUD a few months towards the summer. We'll probably get a notice. We're expecting to get a notice that they're going to retroactively fund us for the entire period. But until then, we are operating under a diminished budget. That budget has some relatively deep cuts, and we have prepared a alternative budget to help us deal with that. We don't have any planned, as a result of this anyway, we don't have any planned reductions in staff or anything of that nature. We were able to make adjustments in our inventory purchases and our contracting. Some of the softer things that we had hoped to do, we had planned to do, we just won't be able to do. We'll have to push off maybe until next year. But our expectation is that once the funding comes in, we'll kind of get back to things kind of as we had hoped they would be. But we did, and I think Commissioner Richard and Commissioner Horace were able to come, and we kind of went through that process. And certainly, if the board would like, we can go that process again so that you guys can see the proposed budget for our cuts. But we are, just so the board is aware, the cuts did happen, and we are certainly prepared to deal with those cuts and continue to move forward. We already discussed financials, but just to kind of recap, we did have a $376,000 year-to-date profit and an $85,000 month-to-date profit. Are there any questions?
Hey Keith, the April dates for the meeting, because April 30th falls on a Tuesday and the 29th falls on a Monday. When are the dates for the meetings in April?
The week before.
Yeah, it's the fourth week, so it's the
22nd
and
and the
24th.
24th?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I want to make sure. And then the presentation that you're going to do on the 22nd, we're going to have that ahead of time?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
so we can look at it?
You will have, actually what you'll get is the full strategic plan. The presentation is an abbreviated, it's kind of make it pretty, but you'll have the full strategic plan as well as presentation if you like before that, yes. We're trying to get that out to you the first week of April, second week at the latest. We want you guys to have it and have time to kind of digest it.
That's very
Yeah,
good.
that way you don't get bombarded with 500 questions. I could ask you those questions ahead of time, so whatever.
Are there any other questions? As far as Sharon's report is concerned, as you'll note, there are, we basically had a net 3 month. We added 3 families to our occupancy rolls. We had 7 move-ins and 4 move-outs for the month of February. Our Ross coordinator, Kim, is getting certified. She's getting some additional trainings. So those trainings are helping her to deal with, we're working with as you saw, some of the officers came. We're working with officers, our community officers, as well as Kim getting additional training to work on and work with our residents who have mental health issues. There are some areas where we need to be cautious about how we address those, and we want to make sure that she has the training to be able to handle the situations appropriately, but also know what areas of that we are and aren't allowed to kind of touch on. There are 19 clients in the program, which I know is a decrease from what we previously been talking about, 21 clients previously, and that's because have some who have dropped out of the program, but we have 4 clients who actually met their goals and have moved out of the program. So that's obviously a
That
plus.
is so awesome.
So, and that's been, a very short period of time. Like I said, it's only been now about 5 months, and we've already gotten upwards of 20, which is, I believe, right at our first year goal, and we're not even halfway through the first year of the program. And of that, we've already started to see pro clients come in, set goals, meet those goals. Sorry.
Moving out of the Ross program, do you mean? Or moving
Yes,
out of
the Ross program.
Okay.
Part of the Ross program doesn't necessarily mean that clients move out of public housing. Sometimes they come in and their goal is to become employed. And so those clients, we set up systems for them, we help them through that. Once they reach that point, that technically is their graduation from the program for that goal. There may be other goals. They may decide to re-sign up for the program, and their new goal will be, now that I'm employed, save up to buy a home or run a home. Gotcha.
Oh, that's good.
One of the other things, or a couple of the other things that we're doing, we have been continuing to work on the smoke-free housing plan. It does take a little while. I know it seems like we've kind of been dragging this out for a little bit, but in order to avoid just kind of a resident kind of backlash in regards to that, we typically meet with the resident associations a couple of times, just kind of explain what we're doing, why we're doing it, and get their feedback as to how we can make this an easy transition. We have set up a resident council strictly for this purpose. One of the areas is at Maple Terrace, where we've been able to kind of go meet with the residents and get a good group of people there who really have a feel for and have a good relationship with the other residents, who can give us feedback on areas where we can set up outside smoking areas and how we can make this a more orderly transition for the residents. So we are working through that process, and it is something that you'll see a little bit of for a little while, but this year we will have it fully implemented. The other big change we're making, and it's one of the things we discussed prior, is a technology change. Previously, all of our residents brought their rent payments to the rent office. There's this whole long 2-day process almost for us to get checks and get them out to the bank. We implemented a lockbox with our banking provider, so now all residents are able to pay their rents directly to the bank. We don't collect any rent checks. It actually decreases a little bit of our risk as far as checks getting lost or any supposed theft happening. We can't be involved in anymore because checks don't come to us. They go directly to the bank. The bank gives us an electronic file. We upload it. The whole process takes a matter of 30 minutes tops. So we've really streamlined this process, and it'll roll out in April. April 1st is the first rent month that we're going to collect rent that way. It'll be a phased-in process. So when we've notified the residents, as of April 1st, that'll be the first month we're expecting them to do that. We'll work with them for the first 2 months. It won't be a full-on requirement until June. At that point, we won't work with them. We'll just tell them they have to send their checks to the bank. But in the in-between months, and we'll accept the payment. We'll send it to the bank on their behalf, and we'll let them know, look, going forward, we need you guys to send the checks to the bank. So we are trying to just kind of streamline things, kind of cut down on some time that we're using to not be as productive as possible.
What's the bank costing us for,
All in, I think it's $100. I think it all ties out. It's roughly $100 a month. It's somewhere in that area. Which, given the amount of time we're letting, we're having staff, it was still a huge savings. We had right now, each manager has to collect all the rents, drive them, or bring them down here. We've got 2 people here who are responsible for parts of the process of bringing in rents, reconciling, double checking everybody's reporting. This way, it's just a much simpler process. I mean, if you do the math on time, we probably spend $200 or $300 per person per day doing this kind of thing. So we're trying to.
Very time saving.
Yeah, and if nothing else, at the time, people can be doing other things. Man, the world better
I
place.
have no question.
Yes, sir.
Because you said a lockbox?
Mm-hmm. That's just the technical term for it, I guess. Basically, the bank collects our rents for us.
Okay.
That's really all it comes down to.
Okay.
It's just like going to a drive-through.
Sort of. I mean, the residents can take their payments to the bank. We don't encourage it mainly because there's a fee involved. So
Yeah.
they are allowed. So if there's a resident who, for whatever reason, can't put it in the mail but can get to a branch, the tellers will take the rents that way. It's just the bank doesn't like it because they have these extra fees, and they will charge us for the fees to move it from one system to some bank thing. But basically the bank handles all of the collections for us. And the residents can mail them out so they can take them in. And we're going to implement probably as part of the strategic plan, a little peek at it, but an online portal as well, so that those residents who want to pay online can actually just go to our website, click a couple buttons, and pay them that way as well. We're trying to kind of consolidate all of these processes that we have, but it just kind of changes who the money goes to. It ultimately, it's going to go to the bank anyway. It kind of cuts out the middleman.
Okay.
Will this create any hardship on anybody? I mean, do most of the residents have vehicles, not have vehicles?
What we found is that the majority of the residents do have access to transportation, and we don't. And one of the things and you'll see in a moment when we talk about the offices, we did consider public transportation time in that proposal, but something like 70% of our residents come here. We did a brief study in the office, just trying to ask around how people got here. Something like 70% of the residents that came during that time period got here by car. Okay. And again, the residents are mailing these in. They're not bringing them in.
I missed that. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Yeah, they're actually mailing. So it's just a stamp, the cost of a stamp. So it'll cost each resident $6.
So they just mail it to the bank as opposed to here. Okay.
Can you provide envelopes, pre-addressed envelopes for them?
We could. We didn't. Mainly because it just kind of puts us back where we were cost-wise. It would cost us, well, not exactly, but it would cost us something like $2,500 to provide, you know, the 12 envelopes pre-addressed for everybody. We could do it, certainly. It's certainly not something we can't do.
What you may want to consider is something in the middle. For the first 5 months, you do it to get them on the system, it's good customer service. Then after that, they're on their own.
Absolutely.
I think I might have missed something.
Yes, ma'am.
So currently, say for instance, residents here,
Mhm.
how do they pay their rent?
They
There's
live
a lockbox, or there's a slide outside.
right now. They take their check, their physical check or money order, and take it. The rent office in this building is on the second floor. They take it to that office. There is, if it's after hours, there's a slip in the door. They slide it in the spot in the door, or they give it to the manager. The manager receives it. There's another person who reconciles the receipts, and then there's another person who enters those receipts into the accounting system and then makes a deposit at the bank. So that's the process in general for rent collection now. The process that we're going to go to is the resident writes out their check, puts it in an envelope, puts it in the mail. That'll get to the bank. The bank will give us an email, basically, with a file that we'll upload into our system. So then, you know, two people aren't even become not involved in the process, and one person simply has to do an upload into our accounting system.
Now, when that envelope goes to the bank, how would it be identified as Aurora Housing Authority?
It'd be
Still
amazing.
making checks payable to the warehouse?
Yes, the checks are still made payable to the Royal House.
Okay.
They are, nothing about the check that from the resident point of view, nothing really changes other than where they send the payment to. The bank has a scanning system that reads the names and the addresses
Okay,
off of the check.
all right,
That's the information that comes to us. That's how we can upload it into our system.
okay, and you know what the amount of money we have in a particular bank?
Mhm.
They may give you some services for free too, if you
We're
ask.
always pushing them on it. Always.
Well, we've dealt with them forever.
And that's the thing, they are a great service to us. You know, I've done this process other places,
Mhm.
and you know, the rate that we're getting is very, very reasonable. It's not, I'm gonna say it's the very lowest rate I've ever seen, but it is a reasonable rate, certainly. And given, you know, the amount of service that they're willing to provide to us, you know, we're not really unhappy at all. I mean, like I said, we've been with them for a very long time. They recognize that, as do we. It's a very, you know, good relationship, and so far, we've really benefited from that relationship.
You know, if somebody wants to hand deliver it, Redwood's just around the corner down there, isn't it?
There's one right in the street. Any other questions?
I'm very pleased with that. You're gonna save a lot of money.
That's the goal.
See?
Yeah, but definitely give envelopes to begin with, in case of an emergency, or be prepared.
We will. There are no questions?
Main staff they've been working really hard to keep up the workloads and vacancies. Actually, I think we're down to about 5, but I see that we're getting a couple of evictions and stuff, so that's just beast of nature, but we've been concentrating mainly a lot on this house that we've been renovating, 1830 Brighton Circle, and the guys are really excited about it because they get to utilize some of their skills other than wrestling with the toilet or doing repairs and stuff, so the guys that, like I said, they get to utilize a lot of skills. Cause I'm very blessed that I got guys that are very skillful in other areas, not just in repairs. So the house is, like I said before, was just totally gutted. I mean, if you ever get a chance to walk through, and I know you're going to get the presentation and stuff, but it's beautiful because, I don't want you guys to ever think that when we turn around and a scared side house in the past that it wasn't, nice and everything, but it was more commercialized. It was like standard, VCT tile, commercial tile. The paint was the same color and stuff like that. It was always, it was a good place to live. It was a good place, but this makes it a little more personal, more residential, more homey like. So basically, we stained all the doors, all the trim, which really accents the walls. We changed the colors of the walls a little bit. we actually put this new flooring, which I've never really dealt with before, but some of the guys have installed in their own home and stuff like that, and it's basically a vinyl tile that looks like a hardwood floor. When you walk in, it looks like hardwood floor, but it actually floats. And what this house is actually, a house that sits on a foundation, and you know how the concrete kind of settles back and forth and stuff. This will keep a lot of the tile from cracking and stuff like that. And also too, it's pretty much maintenance free. In the past, what we have to do when we go into the unit, we have to pretty much strip it down and then re-wax and put several coats of wax and stuff. This is virtually maintenance free, and we're putting it through the whole house. The whole house has got the wood looking finish, and then we changed the patterns in the bathroom and in the kitchen. Then we just kind of accent with some black appliances and put a different type of countertop. But just, you know, just the enthusiasm, just the excitement. We got everybody involved, all the way from, you know, office staff to kind of pick out, because most of the maintenance staff are guys, so, you know, we don't. We're pretty happy with black and white, you know. So they kind of accent in the fixtures and the colors, and you know, really looks really nice, and it just it's completely different. I mean, it just looks like a brand new house, which basically it is. And then the outside, we've done a little bit of repairs, some siding work and some of the one-bys and stuff. We got to replace, and some gutter work and stuff like that. And hopefully, in a way, just nice, possibly even replacing the driveway. Then this month we actually did our biannual cleaning of the dry vents here at Centennial and Baltimore Street. We try to do it at least twice a year.
What does that cost, Jim?
It's cost around $100 to do all the ones in Maple Terrace here in Centennial House.
Oh, that's not bad.
No, it's not.
I don't know what I thought it was gonna be. Thank you.
And then we just had Centess check all our fire extinguishers, our yearly thing. This is something they do every year. And we turned around 9 vacancies. And as you can see, we haven't used too many contractors, so which is a good thing also. Not for the contractors, but for us.
It's money in you guys' pockets.
By the way, I can tell the rest of the board members, I live on Brighton Circle, and I've seen like 4 families go through that house. And I've been in the house several times because my friends were friends with the families that were in there. So I'd love to see it when it's done, and they are working hard. I went by on Saturday and there was people working on the house. So that was awesome when I drove by, and I'm like, that's awesome.
We, you know, and we've discussed this kind of before, and we really want to change the way we do housing here. And that's really, you know, if anybody wants to ask me what Keith wants to do during this time, or he wants to change the way we do housing here, and this is that first step. It's kind of proving to ourselves and to those who see it what we are capable of doing, and then finding a way to do that on a consistent basis. So this is that first step, and once we complete this, we want to do the analysis. Okay, how can we cut costs here? How can we do this faster? How can we do this to improve that until we get it down to what, I guess, to a science, and say this is our process for renovating homes and making them not only better, but making them more useful, making them last longer, and utilizing our own services. Like Jim said, most of this work has been internal to our staff. We haven't really brought in contractors where we needed to, but we've really worked on, you know, allowing our staff to kind of showcase their skill set and some of the things that they're not normally able to do in a work setting. So this is kind of good on both things. We're upgrading home, we're also utilizing the people that we have on staff to do that work.
Tell me we're taking before and after pictures.
Well,
So Brian,
There's more than that, actually, and we'll, you know, we're spoiling someone's surprise, but upon completion, you know, there'll be a presentation. We actually are trying to arrange a formal kind of grand opening, reopening of this home, so that the community and members, people who, you know, I won't say people who doubt us, but, you know, those who might not know,
Why
you know,
not?
let people come in and really see what we're capable of doing, and show that we can do it in a way that's cost effective. But yeah.
Yeah, working on Saturdays. Is that voluntarily or what?
Well, actually, those are contractors.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Just wanna know.
Yeah.
I'm just glad they were working.
I just want-
Were you able to solve the problems over at Maple Terrace?
I believe so. We did sit, and I appreciate Commissioner Richard and Chairman Henry both came and we sat and talked to the residents. I actually went back to the council meeting that they had last week. So what I gathered, we did some reviews, some documentation, and looked to make sure everything's kind of squared away. A lot of the time, one of the problems we have is communication, and we tend to, in the housing authority, talk about these things how we would talk to other staff about them, internalize the conversation, and in doing so, sometimes we don't convey the information, and that really seems like what it came down to. There are certain concerns about making sure that we're being professional at all times and making sure that we are listening, which sometimes is, it causes a lot of problems if you don't take the time to listen and give people the feeling of respect that you are listening to what they have to say.
What? Sorry, I couldn't
Right.
resist.
Oh,
You
right.
just teed me up. You just teed me up.
But, and we will, we're working to address that and make sure that everybody on staff is aware that we expect the highest level of professionalism and listening to our residents. It is, whether it's their best day or their worst day, it's still our responsibility to listen to them. And that's something that we will continue to work on. But as far as I can tell, like I said, I went back to their council meeting, and everybody seemed to be in a pretty good mood. We sat and talked for a little while, kind of joking around. So it seems like things have kind of taken care of themselves.
Thank you.
Okay, keep that house on Brighton Circle. Is that a house that we have targeted for a specific family? I mean, I know we had talked about, the ones that are fixed up better, that there, is some process of who's
The current situation right now is we took it offline to do the modernization. The plan is, after we've done all the showcasing, is that we will identify a specific family that has, met certain, gone above and beyond, and been a really good, as a kind of a reward for being a better family in our community. Ongoing, we will actually we want to actually put in place a few procedural things, some of our preferences on our waiting list to allow for higher income families maybe, or for families with, more needs, so that we're really addressing who gets into which units. But as part of our strategic planning, we'll kind of lay that out, because it will require some changes to the policies that we have now. But yes, to end it all, we are kind of setting up those policies so that at the end we can kind of better determine how far to go with each house, depending on certain criteria. Anything else?
Approval of annual meeting budget?
Yeah. All right. So last month we gave the board the operating budget for fiscal year 2014, which starts April 1st. We did have a brief presentation with Commissioner Richard and Boris, who asked a lot of questions. Not too many, but did have questions and made good points. And those points were taken. So really at this point, we kind of gave a brief presentation of the budget at the last meeting. Does the board really have any questions in regards to the budget?
I just want to be clear on this one issue with the sequester stuff. We're going with the higher budget because that's what we need to do, but we're living within the smaller one until they approve.
And allow me to explain for the full board. We prepared two budgets. Once it became apparent that we may be facing a sequester, we took the step to take our original budget and kind of pair it off so that we could live within what we expected to receive. Because we did go through the sequester and the cuts that happened, we are prepared to live within those means. However, the idea, and I guess the procedure that we'd like to take here, is to approve the eligibility budget. The reason being is I fully expect that HUD later in the year will reimburse housing authorities for the full amount of funding that we're eligible for. If the board approves the smaller budget, then we have no choice but to live within the smaller budget, which, if that's what you want, that's fine, we can do that. But by approving the eligibility budget, that allows us to fully utilize any funds that HUD provides us. We could come back at a later date, just so the board has all the options in front of them, and revise the budget. Typically, we do a revision just to kind of get things more in line with where we are and what we're working on. But in this case, we like to approve the eligibility budget simply because that's truly what HUD owes us. And then, you know, because they're not giving us what they owe us, we are and do have a separate budget prepared to live within whatever means that HUD gives us. HUD will change this all year long because they now have the leeway to do so. So they'll say it's 85% now, it'll be 90% next month, it'll be 65% the month after that, until they get it to where they're going. And then at the end of the year, they say, oh, we owe you $1 million. Here's your money. But we get that all year long, you know. But, and I'm getting off track here, but we want to approve the $13.9 million eligibility budget. And we will certainly, and I think, you know, one of the things that we're very clear about is that we want to obviously live within our means. I don't think you guys will stay around much longer if next year's budget or financial show another $1 million year they lost. So trust me when I tell you we're not going to exceed our spending ability. But if we have a smaller budget approved, then it just becomes a larger headache to kind of operate the remainder of the year when additional funds come in.
I don't see any problem in okaying the big one as long as you're living within the little one.
And like I said, and I apologize, the remaining members who didn't get to see, we didn't send it out, we kind of got into discussion about how we were prepared to deal with the sequester, and that's why I showed the two commissioners over here our preparation. We had already gone through the steps of preparing a revised budget to live within that.
Well, you said you were going to.
Yeah, and absolutely we did, and I'll send that out to the full board so that you guys have it, you can see where the cuts were made and what we did.
I have two questions, Keith. First one is with the new scattered housing and the Jericho stuff that we're gonna have to deal with later this year. That's in this budget, right? And you made assumptions to the best of your capabilities based on that?
Yes.
Okay. And the second question is have you used all of your resources, all of your contacts, all of your knowledge to make sure that this is what we're gonna get done and we're gonna stay within our means?
Absolutely. And then I'll just kind of a brief on the process. And I know for those of you who
Do you want to cross my arms? That's one of the tough questions.
I was starting to notice, got his arms looking. My background is literally in budget. That's when I started in this business. There were two things I was able to do. I worked on mixed finance development and budget. So, fortunately for me, this is kind of easy. One of the things is I've worked at larger agencies. I have multiple kind of private contacts at HUD, so I can pick up the phone and call and understand what HUD's thinking is, or at least try to get an understanding of what HUD's thinking is and where we're going. So one of the things in the beginning of this process that I did was call some of these other agencies, big and small, to say, how are you guys budgeting? What are you going to do about this? How are you going to address X, Y, and Z? And some of the agencies, well, if you read this notice, or if you talk to your HUD officials about this, allowance. So we've gone through the kind of process of really talking it up with HUD, talking it up with other agencies as to how we're dealing with this and how we're going to deal with this. One of the other things that we've done is in this process where we looked at everything, and that's the eligibility budget shows everything that we want to do. All the things that, and this budget does incorporate the things that we're going to present in our strategic plan. How do all these things fit into play? Can we do them? What can we do in year one? What can we really truly afford to do in year one? What can we really truly afford to do in year two, even though year two's budget's not on the table? So we walk through that process, and as you see the estimated pro forma for the strategic plan, it'll kind of come in the picture a little bit more. But we certainly did take those steps, make those phone calls, try to do everything we can to make sure that the things that we're proposing to do, we're either able to do, or if they're not able to do, then they're not in this budget. And if and when we receive certain cuts, which actually to this date we haven't seen those cuts, but when those cuts do happen, we're prepared for those as well. So I guess, to answer your question, yes, we have taken those steps. We internally and externally had those conversations, and I believe that this budget is certainly doable, it's livable, and it will allow us to meet the goals that we have as a means.
I mean, with what's happening in Washington, I think any governmental agency is going to be experiencing some different situations because, as a government, we, as human beings, as a family, you can't keep spending money and not having revenue come in. So, there's going to be some major changes not this year, in the next handful of years. So we have to be very careful and assume the worst and plan for the best. So.
And that's one of the benefits of being in this industry. These cuts that are being proposed, oddly enough, are not the worst I've seen. My first 6 months on the job in this business in Pittsburgh, we got notice we were going to receive 76% of our funding, which is the lowest it's been since 2006. I thought I wouldn't get out of a job before I got into business, but we being able to see that and see how the finance people at that agency, that the management dealt with it and how they work with it, it doesn't seem so scary when I propose it. And we know how to budget. I've never done a budget that expects to receive full funding. It just hasn't happened. It happened 1 year out of the last 7. So it's unreasonable to go on expecting to receive that money. One of the things that we'll, again, I'm kind of opening the door a little bit and giving a preview, but in our strategic plan, we are proposing a way, if necessary, to operate the agency strictly off the rents we receive, which we would receive without any government funding. So we are proposing a way which is kind of survival mode, but we have proposed a means by which we can operate the agency strictly with our own doing and with no government funding.
I like that.
So
That's a
we're
doomsday scenario.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It is, it's there. We don't know. Obviously, we hope that day never comes.
Right.
But in the event that it should, we do have at least a plan in place that we could use to ensure that both the residents and the agency will continue forward.
That's very good.
Good job. Good thinking.
It's a scary time like it. Are there any other questions?
Okay, discussion on redevelopment issues and approvals.
Really, there's not much, discussion. We haven't really done much. As the board knows, we did the CRIB a few months ago. We authorized a change, so that was Friday that went forward. Other than that, we've been working recently with the city, and Rick is here to discuss a little bit about the Urban Land Institute's policy conversation we want to have. Rick and I have talked kind of consistently since that last meeting, just trying to get everything in line and organized. We're going through the procurement process just to make sure that we're not forgetting to do anything on our end as a housing authority. But really the report on that is that we are moving forward with that. We have set up a few dates out in the future where we can plan to get together and work and talk through some things. But unless there are questions, unless Rick want to add a few to that.
So we're going with the urban land.
Well, we haven't picked. That's the name I could remember. I'm sorry.
Okay.
No, we haven't picked. And that's part of the procurement process. There's steps we have to go through to make sure that whomever we're using anyway.
And the scattered site plan went to HUD last week. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay.
It'll be probably a month or so before we hear back on whether the initial plan is approved for review, and then it'll be almost Christmas, somewhere around whether we got awarded those funds.
When that's filed with HUD, is that public and anybody can look at it and they know?
No, at this point it's really just a housing authority.
So if anybody's upset, whining, complaining, wants to sue us, they wouldn't know, and we would find out by when?
Well, that depends. I mean, the discussion itself, HUD isn't really privy to what we decided. Now, obviously, it's HUD, so we'll tell them, we'll talk to them about it. And we've opened that door a little bit. We haven't, they know what we've done, so we have to keep them in the loop. There weren't, from their point of view, any negative conversation about it. They knew, because it was already part of our initial plan. So they are well aware of that, something we're going to do anyway. So no, to my knowledge, there's no, it's not really open to that right now. And there may come points later down the line where we have to have votes about certain things. At that point, it will become an issue, but that's not until October, November, when we're starting to award certain things.
Let me clarify something and make sure I explain this up properly. Before, with the previous attorney, she said if we didn't do something with Jericho, we were gonna have all these people, okay, yell, scream, sue. That's the kind of thing I'm worried about. Okay.
Well, I'll put it this way.
That's what I heard, man.
No, I'll put it this way. We are doing something. And I think that's what's kind of lost in the conversation, is that we are acting, and to the best interest of the best understanding of the board and the housing authority, we are acting in the best interest of our residents. We are assisting residents residents we're furthering affordable housing by being involved in a scattered site project. That's at least my point of view on this, is that we are involved in literally furthering affordable housing. There are, in this plan, a number of units that were not affordable units prior to us being involved in this plan. So, again, I mean, we're in public and we can be sued at any time, but I feel that we've done what we need to do to say that we are meeting that. And our attorneys have, and we discussed it a little bit, they're doing a little research into that.
The new attorney.
Yes, yes. I have spoken with HUD, Gabe, and I talk kind of regularly. He did mention he was aware. He kind of discussed the possibility out there, but like he said when I talked to him was, we are, if you look at our mission, that's what we're doing.
Moving forward.
Exactly. And that's really, I mean, nobody can dictate how quickly we move forward.
Right.
So.
Okay. Thank you.
Is there any positives or negatives to kind of letting people know that we have approved, or, you know, at least moving forward with the scattered site, or, you know, just kind of letting the public know a little bit more and let them in? I feel like
Yeah,
we're
we
always kind of
discussed that.
behind.
Maybe we have to wait for HUD to give us.
Well, there are certain pieces to it. One, and I'm not by any means saying we shouldn't, you know.
I'm just throwing it out there. I wanted to hear what you had to say.
There are a couple things. One, you know, by throwing out, in my opinion, if we go with that, it does kind of entertain the thoughts of those who may want to argue against what we're doing. You know, that housing authority isn't meeting their need, and not building on Jericho, and not doing this. So for those, individuals or groups that may decide, that may have an interest in filing suit, at this point, because we're so early in the process, you know, we approved the scattered site deal, which is or isn't a development when you really look at it. It's certainly not a development deal, you know, in a general sense of a development deal. So I think the lack of information that even we have right now limits our ability to really be forthcoming. If the board wished to, you know, state that, you know, yes, we have approved that, you know, scattered site piece, that's really not a, you know, hard thing to do. We can be as open as you want to be with that, just because it's scattered site housing. We're not building anything. We're just improving what's there, and we're not really dictating the process so much. This is something that we're assisting a developer by adding vouchers to. It's really more for us. It's just a financial issue. The developers really don't want to do any development. So publicly, you know, there's obviously certain we could be forward with that. You know, the reason, and I don't want to say it sounds bad, we're not trying to hide it. We're just being careful with how we present it, simply because there are those in the community that have, at least historically, kind of been against anything, and we really want to be able to move forward with at least something. So, you know, we're just kind of walking a fine line at this point, and as we get more information, obviously we'll need to have a more public conversation about it anyway, simply because for example, to give vouchers, that's an actual procurement and an award that must be given. That's a public matter. We'll have to come to a board meeting and discuss that and vote on that. As far as any agreements that we make financially with the developer, same kind of situation. So it's really a matter of how the board wants to approach that. I mean, we can really play it either way. I just feel that right now it's so early in the process. The little bit of information that we could provide could cause more confusion than really should exist.
And what we voted on was already public, right?
Yes, we did. Yes, and that's not that we did vote.
Well, yeah, there's a difference though between being, I mean, everything that we do is public, but that doesn't mean that the public knows about it.
I think he's talking maybe with stakeholders and what have you.
No, it really was just like even a news release saying, you know, hey, this is what we have done. I mean, I think I went to a couple of alderman, you know, debates, and vacant housing is one of the things that mostly came up, you know, a big thing, and it's like we're addressing that. I think, you know, number one, I think it's a positive thing, but number two, I just wouldn't want someone down the line to say, well, how come we're only hearing about this now after it's already approved, and maybe we can just start to be more proactive about letting people know. I mean,
and that's certainly, and maybe, you know, probably speaking a little bit ahead, but, you know, I'm sure Rick from
Rick's got his
from
hand up.
point of view of-
Well, I was just gonna say, we've got, I mean, the pre-application, and then there's the final application, so we have to be invited to do the final application, and that final application, there's a number of things that the city has to put out, there's a number of things that if you're going to allocate vouchers that have to have additional, it seems to me the time would be, once we know that we're invited to do that, then let's plan collectively to say, you know, rather than put out a news release and then 2 or 3 weeks later we find out we're not invited to do anything.
Exactly, it makes
You know,
sense.
right, so I think the time to do it will be as soon as.
Still doing something.
Yeah, no, I see,
like that
I get your point too,
Because at
Dave.
least we're able to come, you know, to a meeting of
And all, and all,
Yeah.
and all, and, you know, like I said, if we go out now, you know, it's not to say that we can't, but we certainly can. And I don't want to say that we can't. I don't like saying we can. If you want me to do something, I'll figure out how to do it. But like I think if we do it now, it's just we just have so little information about where we're going to be in 3 or 4 months. That's really the only thing I think right now.
And there's a larger picture to share as well, as we move forward with a public dialogue as well, because the timing of what you guys approved to do is, you know, should land around the time that we know that we're approved to move forward on the scattered site piece, and then you can have the larger conversation as well about what else do we want to do.
Sure.
And so I think that it makes for a nice opportunity for the city and the housing authority to stand together and say, okay, this is moving forward now, and we want to plan for our next step as well and have this dialogue. And so I think the timing probably, you know, Keith, you said you think about a month we'll find out whether or not.
The invitation, you know, they do the invitation pretty quickly. Let me say, in the fall round, they do the invitation relatively quickly. I think we knew that we were invited back pretty quickly from our original pre-app. Assuming that they work on relatively the same schedule, a month, 2 months, they receive their applications, they've at least determined who's in that top tier that can come back and actually put a full application in.
And then the one thing I just wanted to say about that dialogue too, you know, Keith's working on the procurement side, but we've gone ahead and taken the steps and sort of set some preliminary meeting dates for the Urban Land Institute. It's a month out, so that Keith's got enough time. But so I think it's like April 22nd, there's a tentative meeting set for folks to come out, see the Jericho property, and begin that process if that's the direction we're going. So we went ahead and set those things up so that we don't have further delay. If that is the direction that we end up going, then we'll be ready to hit the ground running as soon as the whatever procurement issue is finalized.
So to answer Dave's question, we should do a press release when they've invited us to participate. And you're saying if we're gonna do that, then we add the city and the other part of it too.
I think it's an opportunity to say, you know, here's the way we're moving forward.
So that's a
now,
yes, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. You gotta cut these attorneys off. Love you, Rick.
Yes. Right.
I have a question, I think, Ray asked it sometime before. After the 15 years, of these scattered housing, who's gonna take care of the maintenance of it?
Well, that's one of the things the developer and the housing authority and city will have to kind of arrange in our agreements. There's an actual written agreement that will govern how all parties involved kind of act. So one of the things the developer mentioned was, you know, when he was here, their projects typically do so well that at the end of the 15 years, they actually want to sign up for another 10 years or so. The city has brought to the table a home ownership discussion. And I'm actually meeting with the young lady from the County Housing Authority. They actually receive vouchers that are specifically for home ownership. The entire purpose is that, you know, there's vouchers that have a limited time period after which the residents are supposedly going to become homeowners. There's actually financial benefit in it for the housing authority. Housing authority gets $1,000 every time somebody does become a homeowner. So it's motivation for us, motivation for the residents, and it kind of works within a broader plan of increasing homeownership within the city. So as we learn more about that program, we'll try to implement that and we will definitely apply for those vouchers. I don't know, given the environment, whether or not we will get them. But so really to answer your question, we have yet to determine exactly what happens at the end of that period. We would ideally want either homeownership or for the management agent to continue on managing these properties.
To follow up on Henry's question, that house, that land, who owns that?
Which house?
The scattered
Oh,
sites?
In this proposal, the housing authority doesn't own properties. They are either owned by the developer or by the city, and we're only providing vouchers at this point.
Oh, okay.
Cause that's important.
Shares, yeah,
So it wouldn't be on our back.
No, it wouldn't be. No.
very good. Do we need to go into a closed executive session?
No, we have one very brief, I know we're getting close, I know we don't want to run here forever, but we have one very brief presentation we need to give. We discussed previously, the possibility of relocating our offices. So, in that discussion, what we had originally proposed, and Commissioner Richard hit me with a question during our meeting a little while back, it kind of shook me and made me really rethink the process. We proposed a very broad office relocation, which was very, I won't say costly, but was, we were looking for higher tier, better office space. And one of the questions that came up was, during this funding environment, with the uncertainty of funding, is it a good idea to potentially tie up $100,000 a year for office space when we have free space already? So we kind of took that and retooled the proposal, and so here's what we had. So we looked at our need. We use about 3,000 square feet of space here, but we're out of it. Based on the layout, number of offices, spaces, the way it's kind of worked, we don't have any additional space. All of our meetings, whether they be staff meetings, resident meetings, they take place in this room. So if I'm in here, no other staff can meet with the resident here. If the resident and the staff room are here, I can't meet. So we're kind of blocked off in that way. This building being older, we've kind of discussed, it's just a little difficult to upgrade sometimes. It's a little easier to utilize new space. So we looked at a lot of locations. We actually drove around all over the city for about 2 weeks and looked at different locations. These were the 3 ideal locations. The community center we added, and we'll talk about that in a moment. 75 Executive Drive, 100 South River Street, and our very vacant community center. Executive Drive is out by the Pocket Valley Mall, all the way up by 59. Beautiful space, but very far out. River Street is, and for those who don't know, right downtown. It's really a prime location because it's right in the middle of all the activity down there. It's right across the street from where the new library is going to be built. So our first property, Executive Drive, as you can see on the map up there.
My first office building was.
Really? Oh, okay.
Office was.
Maybe I should push it a little higher, get some sentimental folks out of here. This was admittedly our original first choice. The office space is really nice office space. It's in a really great location in regards to amenities, location to the highway. It was expensive space, but not the most expensive space to rent. And the company was willing to provide a pretty large build-out allowance. We didn't have to pay for utilities or maintenance or upkeep. It was just a matter of paying the rent. The rent had a fairly low payment schedule. So let's some of the pluses. And one of the big things that we looked at was public transportation. Dealing with our resident base, trying to provide a means by which we can allow them to get to us is very important. So the average transportation time at this location was the furthest. It was 52 minutes on average to get out to this property. This was a big problem for us. The nearest bus stops is walkable, 500 feet. And there are plenty of bus stops and transportation access. It does come with a large parking lot. We looked at the cost, 5-year cost, because that's the term of their proposed initial lease, would have been around $518,000, which is roughly $100,000 a year. 10 years out, I would say $1 million. This is the proposed layout they gave us, 6,900 square feet. Like I said, it's a very nice layout, I will admit. Very large boardroom. We've got 10 full offices, 3 set-aside meeting spaces, a kind of a pulpit or a pulpit. But that and all set up for a Section 8 department that's open that allows them to kind of work. The space there now is an additional kind of set-aside space, but it's much smaller. There's only 4 cubicles, so this kind of opens that up. It doubles that space. We do have some. If you look here, and here we just have some additional set-aside space for you. So this was if you want to talk about a dream space, this is it. It's very spacious and laid out. And of course, all the staff were excited about the thought of being close to the mall and all the places to eat out that way. So we looked also, and this was another we really wished that Executive Drive property was on this location. This location is the best location you could possibly have.
It is. It's right in the center.
Downtown,
Thanks.
exactly. You could walk to most places. The average bus trip is 33 minutes. So because it's central, obviously, that makes for ideal location. Several bus stops within the area, closest being 400 feet away. The biggest problem with this location, obviously, number one is price. Their pricing was it was considerably higher than Executive Drive. The other problem was they offered no build-out allowance. They expected us to pay for the entire build-out. We also had to pay for the utilities and upkeep, given that we really they fell out very quickly with them. Plus, the other problem was there's no parking there. There's street
That's
parking.
absolutely right.
The nearest lot is actually between where the housing authority would be and where the library is going to be. There's a lot on the other side. Now, I assume the library would add parking, but parking's an issue at this location.
It is.
So then we looked to what was affordable and what made sense. We currently have a 5,100 square foot location we don't use for anything. It just sits there.
How much?
5,100 square feet.
I didn't know it was that big.
Mm-hmm.
It's very nice.
And it is
I
nice.
guess from the street, it doesn't look that big, does it?
It does. I was in there the other day, and when you walk it and really envision where the officers, and we'll show you where the officers are going to go, it really lays out really nice. I mean, it is a spacious area. It allows us a lot more opportunity.
Lots of parking there too.
Yeah, plenty.
Right.
14 acres wide. So what we look at here is, obviously it's in the Jericho Circle property, which, it has its issues for housing, but it doesn't have an issue for office, because everybody drives to work. So that solves that problem. The average transportation time is right in the middle at 46 minutes. And I will admit, the reason that number gets so high is we do have a few scattered sites that are out in Fox Valley, that are out in the Far East. It's particularly difficult for those families to take a bus all the way to this end of town. From what we looked at now, we're not certain, never talked to these families, we assume that those families had cars, because I don't know how they get to our office either if they're taking a bus, because the nearest bus stop to those properties, and I'm sure there's a spreadsheet we did to show the bus time for every single property that we have. And the walk from those properties to the nearest bus stop is 30 of the 46 minutes. So I'm pretty sure those families are driving to our location. So this is probably, when you really take out the outliers, on par with the downtown location, about 30 minutes to get to us.
You're just using Jericho Circle right now from storage, from what I
Yeah.
heard.
It just
Jimmy said before.
Mhm. The nearest bus stop is right on property, 100 feet. There are plenty of bus stops in the immediate area.
If we build there though, wasn't that gonna be used for other stuff?
I'll get to that.
Okay, sorry.
It's
They'll
all
be able to
right.
use this building.
Huh?
They'll be able to use this building.
Okay.
I bet.
We can build out the parking however we want. We did leave the street around the community center, but it still exists. And there's a large lot on that side of the street, right immediately behind the building, that can be built out for parking, for visitors, staff. The cost, obviously, being that we own the building, the only substantial cost we have comes in the first year, which is our build-out cost. We have to gut the building, add the walls, make those changes. But having a brief conversation with Carlos, $330,000 over 5 years, $660 over 10. So we're at less than half of the cost of the other properties. So this is the layout we're proposing. It's a little small, but what we're looking at here is a boardroom. Now this boardroom, you sat here when it gets filled with people, is about 400 square feet. That proposal is a 600 square foot boardroom. It's much larger, much more spacious. We'll have more room for seating, and we can lay it out however we kind of desire. We'll just ignore the executive offices next to it and not talk about that. But so as you can see, we have room for an entire wall of offices here. As you walk through the entrance, the Section 8 department and their director can be together. Right now, that's not possible because of where they're laid out. The director actually sits back by me. Section 8 department's on the other side of the building. We do have private meeting space, which is something we don't have here, separate from the boardroom. We have offices back here. We have public restrooms and a waiting area, which would be a separate room, television, brochures. This area front here is actually all glass, so it's a very nice space, kind of a walk-in area. But what you end up with is just a much more open design. And this layout is dependent upon where the load-bearing walls and everything fall. But this entire layout allows for, a hallway walk space, meeting space, larger boardrooms. The offices get to be a little larger, which helps because a lot of our managers do meet with residents from time to time. Right now, we have much smaller offices. So this just kind of expands what we're able to do. Some of these offices, more office space than we really need. Some of these offices are vacant for growth, for programming, for any other things we need to kind of run through here. This, I think, is a total of 9 or 10 offices. 2, 3, 4, 5, it's just, so yeah, 9 offices versus the 6 that we have now. The Section 8 department seats 8 cubicles versus the 4 that we have now. So there's just adding meeting space, which means we have roughly 7 extra spaces that we don't have now. So that's plenty of room to kind of grow out at very minimal cost. So look at some of the comparisons we talked about before, just so you can see kind of graphically what we're talking about cost-wise, your Executive Drive, your River Street, your Jericho Circle Community Center. Same thing over 10 years, it gets much more kind of exacerbated in these areas, but we're able to control these costs because it's our building. So if we determine that there's a way to save money by lining the roof with solar panels, we can do that. It's our building. If we want to add a second floor, again, our building. We want to build across the street, our land. So all of the control issues go away because it's our property. Same thing with the travel time. As you can see, River Street, Executive Drive, and Jericho Circle, kind of right in the middle. With those outliers, like I said, it probably falls closer to the River Street property. So we did a little analysis, just kind of looking at what we wanted to do. Which one is expand into a larger space, more programming, have a little bit more efficiency. We can kind of place people differently and allow for a little more freedom to kind of operate freely. And more importantly, we save money. And we utilize space that right now we're paying to maintain the space as it is. If something breaks over there, we still have to go over there and fix it. We're still paying the utilities because you can't cut all the utilities off. We have things over that need to be maintained at a certain temperature. So we own the building anyway. We're operating the building as it is. These are kind of small, so we'll just kind of run through this real quick. This provides, let's say, 4 additional offices, 4 cubicles, private meeting space, and 200 square foot more of a boardroom. We entirely control the site. There's no long-term cost obligation. We own the building. There's no debt on the building. There's no monthly bills of $8,000 or $9,000 to maintain occupancy. We're using a site that sits vacant, and if we don't, just as with any house, if you don't put something in it, they fall apart over time. This avoids that situation. If you look at our short-term costs, even though we have to do a $200,000 or $300,000 build out immediately, it's still less than what it would cost 4 years worth of rent someplace else. It's easily accessible, and considering some of the things we're planning to do in the strategic plan, rebranding being one of them, this is an opportunity, again, sort of like the Brighton House, for us to really showcase what we're capable of doing and showing off that we're about doing things differently. There are negatives. I'm not going to say there aren't any. It will sit, for the time being at least, by itself on a 14-acre site, which when the demo guys are done, it will be a nice green grass site. But so that is a negative, that it does sit kind of out by itself on the site. But it also helps because we're able to monitor that site. There are people there, there's activity every day. So it just doesn't sit by itself. There is a significant renovation cost. And I have to talk to Carlos, and we're looking at maybe $250,000, $300,000 to get kind of things torn down and built back up.
It won't take long to recoup that though,
No, not at
versus
all.
one of those other offices.
Absolutely, the savings would show up pretty much in the first year. We are responsible for certain things we would not have been potentially with the rental, which as far as maintenance, repairs, utility costs, those kinds of things. And based on the building itself, if we needed additional space, we would have to literally build it because we would, or we have to move back over here and take everybody out. But
If you move the offices from here, Keith, what's the cost to redo this stuff here? Is that somewhere?
we haven't really dealt with that just yet. It's not in this proposal. Really, if you want to look at it though, it depends on what kind of tenant would come in here. Because we propose to allow individual groups to utilize offices, so if they needed one office to do a medical kind of sit down kind of thing, consultations, they could do that. If one tenant wanted to come in and utilize more than just 1 or 2 office spaces, we would obviously kind of work with them to kind of get this office kind of laid out better to keep it rented.
So we're not going to use this office space that we have now for the Aurora Housing Authority. We're going to try to lease it out or use it.
we're trying to, the original proposal that we kind of predicated this on was that what we want to do is open this up as a community resource center. The Ross program and all the people that Kim works with in the Ross program, all the different organizations can be here in one place for our residents.
Okay.
That's great.
I like that.
So this is just kind of what we're looking at doing. If we had to do that, we want this proposal, which is obviously a complete interior remodel to get to that floor plan. We want to do the exterior operations to make it shiny and new on the outside. Some renovations that Carlos was talking about, we can put in some new efficient lighting that we get a grant for, which actually we don't even have to pay for that. So there is some savings in doing some of this upgrading too. Obviously we need parking, so we'll have to build those parking lots out. We would upgrade all of our mechanical systems just to make sure they were kind of up to speed and able to handle the amount of traffic we have. All the lighting systems, we go with smart systems that we could find a way to put solar paneling on a roof or on the ground somewhere that would save energy costs. Obviously, we would at least address that or try to do that. Security cameras, obviously we need those. We're toying with the idea on this property of fingerprint entry systems. We would definitely do it at this location just because it's a very secure means of gaining access to a building. And then of course, we want the high-speed internet and networking technology systems on the property, kind of things we're working towards here anyway.
Okay, when Jericho goes ahead, that was going to still be the same.
The
center.
property,
Would you have to do a new building then for the Jericho people?
not necessarily, because what they had planned in the drawings was that they needed to build an office site there. If we occupy this space and we determined that it would be beneficial, we could certainly just move that location, kind of have them housed it on a different portion of the site. They would have to add on to our office. But ultimately, us being here on this site wouldn't really impede what they plan on doing, just require them to draw it up a different way.
Okay.
So these are some of the renderings we played around with. It's kind of what they would look like. So here's your very fancy all wood boardroom. Promise you, we will not do anything that extravagant, but well, hey, you guys are the board. What you want? But this is our proposed boardroom. As you see, it's a bit more spacious, more tables, some TVs to kind of. These presentations can be easier to watch. We have 4 TVs in a room. The executive office.
Yeah.
And you know what I noticed too, by the way?
No part of the bathroom, what?
No, see, I'm trying not to go too far. But I was looking at this picture after we rendered it and we were going through it. The pillow.
Pillow said girls
Right.
only.
I didn't realize that when I was laying it out. Pillow says girls only in this area. It's a couch right now. It's a sofa.
Hey.
So, that.
There's our first lawsuit.
But so the pillow wasn't intentional. It was really just kind of there. So a typical, staff office. You see, there's a little more room there. Chairs, there's these kind of empty drawings. They're not out in the furniture room, but and in our meeting room, which we didn't have prior as well. So that's the presentation. Basically, what showing the board that what we're looking to do is kind of get the okay to move on. And it's not a vote because we're not contracting with anybody. It's our own property or anything like that. We're just kind of, this is the proposal for you guys to chew on and talk about, and we can discuss what you want to do with that if you want to on Wednesday.
Will our own guys do most of the work?
Absolutely.
Good.
That is very good.
When are you looking to do this by?
Be quite honest, we would, if the board would say go ahead and do it, we would start those planning processes after the strategic plan. So we're talking about starting really digging in the house. We're going to work in May. I don't know how long the work might take, but let's say 3 months for the work, 4, any longer. Okay, 5 months for the work. So
It always takes twice as long, doesn't it?
We have
And it always costs twice as much.
we certainly have the funding. In the budget, we actually proposed $100,000 for $140,000 just for new rent. That money would obviously go to this, but when you look at it also, the capital fund, which couldn't be used for rent, can be used for this because we own this property and we are improving our own property. So there's capital funds that can be used for this as a reimbursement. And also we use some of our grant funding as well because we do as much energy efficient upgrading as possible. So budgetarily, this is certainly much easier to do than some of the other proposals. Even if you look at, like I said, year 1, it will cost more than the rent flat out would. But year 2, 3, 4, by the end of the 5th year, we've actually saved about $600,000. So
I think it's great.
I do too.
Just one thing, you mentioned solar
Mhm.
energy, how about wind energy?
we could put in any kind of efficient energy that we could get our hands on, and we would do it. I really do believe, I've seen where, apartment complexes actually get a check back from.
Our township commissioner, the highway commissioner, he's got, along Butterfield Road, I don't know if you ever go down that way or
I
not.
actually live over there now.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, we just bought a house, so yeah.
Okay, well, they got two of those wind tunnel things there. And the first one, he got them both for nothing, if I remember right. And he gets money every month,
But,
yeah,
how do you get?
John
it for nothing?
Shoemaker,
I like
Some grant, I'm sure.
yeah, that's how he got it paid
highway
for,
commissioner.
yeah, John Shoemaker.
He was my kid's
Give him a
soccer
call.
coach.
Is it John?
Yeah.
You want his number?
See, this guy. But that's proposed that the board approves,
I don't think right now you're gonna have any problem with any of it, boy. It doesn't sound like it.
Okay with me.
I'm just so happy we're not paying somebody else around.
Now, as much as we can, utilize our own people and save some money. And it's actually, I can't take the credit for the idea, because Commissioner Richard hit me with a question when we were doing the budget proposal. And I took it home, and I was sitting home like, feeling a little defeated, I'll admit it. I was like, well, no, I know. See, the budget proposal, I was like, I'm not gonna get into office, it's sweet. But when we talked it up, I was like, well, you're right.
Made him think out of it.
He's like, you were right in the fact that it wasn't, this isn't the time to be doing that kind of spending of $500,000 over 5 years, $1 million over 10.
Right.
When we're talking about over 10 years, $500,000, and that's only because we have a build out.
And we got those cuts that may be coming more than what we know.
And all of this allows us to maintain the fact that we own the property, there's no ongoing payments. We can kind of address that.
So we're showing responsibility to the community, and like
Right.
you said, it's a changing of.
And it's sitting there empty.
Besides what you already talked about, any negatives whatsoever that you can see about having the housing authority out there? Far west, is that the west side of town?
Yeah,
The far west side of town?
I mean, we're not doing housing there, which I know has always been kind of an issue, so I can't imagine
It's
any.
not that far west, it's south.
South.
And it's not, I mean, even from this location, really, it's a 2-minute drive there. We're not far away from where we were.
Just,
Yeah, no, unless, other than somebody just not wanting the housing authority there, I can't think of any real reason why it would be bad. So, Commissioner, it's all yours, Chairman.
Okay, any other questions, comments? You wanna put something in the beacon?
you wanna wait till we vote on it?
Exactly.
Well, you don't need to vote on it.
I'm looking
It's
forward to
a-
doing something
Yeah,
together
well,
in
then
a
you
month
can-
or so.
All, any of the contracts, I would say, because internally, it's
Yeah.
all staff. And this is that's a-
No.
I might be wrong, but if
I
we're
think
spending
we-
any money on that amount, we should.
So,
This is you both have to do with myself.